Good evening. I want to welcome you to this telephone town hall on the Republican Government Shutdown, hosted by Congresswoman Julie Johnson. If at any point you would like to ask a question, please press *3. If you would like to subscribe to Congresswoman Johnson's newsletter, press *6. Again, that's *3 for a question and *6 to be added to the newsletter. I'd now like to turn it over to Congresswoman Julie Johnson for an opening statement.
Well, hello, everyone. It is so great to be with you again. I want to take a moment just to thank you all for taking time out of your day to be here with us for this important conversation on the Republican government shutdown. I'm Congresswoman Julie Johnson, and I'm so proud to represent the Texas 32nd Congressional District in the United States Congress. There's so much to get to tonight. We're going to try to cover a lot of things. I want to encourage you to ask questions. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, please do. We have a lot of great information that we put out there, and just hit that *6 button. But hopefully, if I'm doing my job right, I'll get to a lot of your questions up front. But at any rate, so as you know, our government shutdown is because Republicans who control the House, the Senate, and the presidency have refused to return to Washington to do their job to ensure millions of Americans can retain access to health care. And I kind of wanted to take a moment just to explain to you how we got here and what do I see as the pathway out. First of all, the government funds and operates on a fiscal year. And so our fiscal year ends September 30th every year. This is not a surprise date. This is a date that is on the calendar every year. The Congress knows that this is coming every single year, and so this is not a surprise. And it is Congress's responsibility to pass spending legislation that funds departments, agencies, and programs by this date every year. And this is done through a comprehensive appropriations process. They passed 12 appropriations bills that are supposed to be passed by this deadline. And what happens is this appropriations committee is subdivided into 12 subcommittees, and they go through this detailed process where they have robust hearings, and they are supposed to evaluate what programs work, what programs don't, should funding be adjusted, and this is how the government is supposed to work. Even though the Republicans control the House agenda, they control all of the committees, they have not passed not even one of these appropriations bills. So because they have completely failed to do their job on the appropriations, we're here at a crisis point. Everyone in Congress knew this deadline was coming, but the Republicans did not get the job done to get this done by this deadline. So what have they tried to do? They've passed a continuing resolution that basically says we're going to keep on keeping on, and we needed like 7 more weeks. So they put a continuing resolution to extend the government only until November 21st. And in the context of that, they said, well, give us that opportunity to discuss health care, because this continuing resolution completely ends all funding for the subsidies that you get for the Affordable Care Act. And so it's going to put millions and millions and millions of Americans and Texans and 100,000 of my constituents in a real peril for their health care. And I voted against the bill when it first came out. I have voted against this resolution because it guts all of your health care, and I'm going to continue to vote against it until we can have a budget in place that accommodates and makes sure that people have their health insurance. And so I want to give you some examples to make it, just so you can understand. So without these tax credits, let's just say that you are a 60-year-old couple, you have a household income of $82,000 a year. Right now, your health insurance premium is approximately $7,000 an annual basis. That premium is going to rise to almost $23,000 just because of this. That makes this absolutely unaffordable for so many people and so many families. And so I'm very concerned about what is going to happen. And these tax credits are set to expire at the end of this year. And that means that when you renew your health insurance, that process goes into effect January 1st. Now, on November 1st, so just next week, you will receive your renewal notices for the health care, assuming based on no credit extension, because that was what was passed in Trump's big bill back in March. And so that's what you're going to see. And Democrats are fighting hard to hold the line. And I'm really pleased that we have kind of an unbreakable wall on this, that we are fighting with everything we can, because everything I've heard from you so far, and when you've reached out to my office, is, for the love of God, fight for my health care. Do not let this end. And so that is what we are doing, and that is what I am doing, because you're going to have to start making the decisions. This argument that Republicans have that says, well, we can just deal with this later. We can deal with this in January. That is not authentic. That is not true. That is not factual, because you're going to get this notice starting November 1st, and you're going to have to make a decision. Can I afford this health care? Can I sign up for it? Am I going to be able to pay my bill? And most folks, I think, are not going to be able to do that. And so, the other part of this, what this whole thing does, is it's going to have a catastrophic impact on our healthcare system as a whole, because it's not just the Affordable Care Act credits in this one microcosm. It's on top of the fact that Texas already leads the nation in people without health insurance. We have already almost 6 million people that don't have access to health coverage. This bill is going to kick another 4 million Texans off of health insurance. Then coupled with the fact that when the Medicaid cuts go in next year, that's another 4 million Texans. So that is 14 million people in our state that will not have access to health care. Well, our health structure just cannot support that. It cannot sustain it. And that's why they're saying so many hospitals are going to close and providers are going to close. And if you do have insurance from, say, a large employer, then all of your premiums are going to go up exponentially as well. So that is why we're having this fight, is because health care is a fundamental right. People should be able to go to the doctor. We are the wealthiest country in the world. We have the best medical providers in the world, and people need to be able to have access to them. And so that is sort of where the path is. And so I want to remind you, if you have any questions on this, to please press *3 and then again *6 for our newsletter. So where do we go from here? A lot of the calls that my office has been getting is, when will this end? This is terrible. The shutdown's going to hurt us in a lot of other ways. I really do think that this November 1st date is going to be a really critical deadline, because first of all, a lot of our federal workforce will not receive the paycheck, and that is horrible. It's a pain point that people will start screaming loudly about. And then also, all these people across the country are going to get their notices. Only 6 states have folks receive their notices of their health insurance premium escalations. One of those is Georgia. And you can already see Marjorie Taylor Greene's reacting to her constituents from Georgia, because they've already seen what this is going to do. And she's actually flipped the script, and she's actually going, yeah, we need to fix healthcare because this is terrible, because she knows that this is going to be really, really bad for her constituents. I don't need these notices to go out to know that these are going to be really bad for our constituents, which is why, we're fighting really hard on the front end for all of this. The other thing is, there's a lot that we need to do to improve our healthcare structure in this country to make it more affordable and more accessible. Extending these tax credits is certainly one thing that absolutely needs to be done. But, I'm hosting a healthcare roundtable in the next few weeks, bringing in, healthcare professionals from a variety of different perspectives, from providers to consumer groups to, all kinds of things about bringing down the cost of healthcare. I've authored a prior authorization bill reform to reduce the burdens of having to access your care. Also, PBM reform to be able to bring down the cost of drugs and price transparency issues. But I want to just put this out there. Our best ideas come from our constituents and our folks. So if you have ideas on how to practically bring down the cost of healthcare, please let us know. we're working on putting together a comprehensive legislative package on that. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Obviously, one of the big impacts of this shutdown is the impact on federal workers. We're very concerned about them across the country. Approximately 700,000 federal employees have been furloughed. Many of those, most of them are working without pay. Our district has 4,600 federal employees. Approximately 1,000 of those are veterans. One of the things that I have been clear about is the fact that the House needs to be back in session to ensure that our federal employees are paid and taken care of during this shutdown. I have co-sponsored the Pay Our Military Act, which will create a permanent solution to make sure our military isn't subject to these political whims when the government shuts down like this. Speaker Johnson has refused to bring the House back to address these issues. But once this shutdown ends, all federal employees will receive their back pay when the government reopens. But, it's just it's going to suck for them during this interval where they're not going to get a paycheck. That means bills pile up. So if you know people who are in the federal workforce, reach out, do what you can to help. Obviously, if you're in the federal workforce and you need assistance, please contact our office. We can direct you to resources that we've become aware of to help during this really terrible time for our federal employees. And, our federal employees, they're working without pay. They're not stopping to do their job. What is really incensing me is Donald Trump right now wants a $230 million payment from the federal government as compensation to him for being found criminally liable in all of these lawsuits. He sent $20 billion to Argentina to bail out his dictator friend. He's buying 2 new luxury jets for Kristi Noem to fly around and private jets to take her photo ops. And all of this would have happily more than covered the funding necessary for a 1-year extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credit to ensure that millions of Americans have access to affordable health care. So let's be clear, this isn't a situation that we can't find the money for Americans to have health care. It's just that Trump and the Republicans in Congress, they just don't care. They don't want to fund it. They don't have a desire to fund it. And so we need to make sure that Cornyn and Cruz's office hear from each one of you, that Republicans in this region, if you have a different representative, if you're on this town hall, a lot of folks join our town halls because I'm the only one that'll do a town hall around here. The Republicans won't do town halls, and so because they're hearing the truth from their constituents and they don't like that. So we have a lot of folks in neighboring jurisdictions that like to join our town halls. So if you're on here from that, please reach out to your member of Congress and tell them that you want them to fund your health care. Another issue that we've been hearing from folks about in the last day or two, and this has just made me so upset, is the devastation to the White House. I mean, I cannot believe Donald Trump took a wrecking ball to the East Wing. It is so upsetting. And I've heard from so many of you, and it just hurts you to your core that the history of this country is just being decimated by this administration. And this White House doesn't belong to Donald Trump, and it doesn't belong to the billionaires who are funding his efforts. This White House belongs to the people. And it is just very, very upsetting. I want you to know that the Democrats who are on the committee that oversees the White House and has jurisdiction over these issues are raising all kinds of hell with the administration, are writing letters. I think some lawsuits may be drafted here in the next couple of days. And we're doing everything that we can to, get answers to this. Unfortunately, as you all know, as you all can see with your own eyes, the demolition has happened. And so it's just so heartbreaking that this administration has been so reckless with the history of our country, the history of the historic buildings that we have, and just their whole attempts to just whitewash history as it is. It's just morally wrong. And I just want you to know that I feel the same pain you do. and I'm just as incensed and enraged as you are. As you heard from previous town halls that we've done, I'm on a litigation task force. There's a lot of litigation that's been happening. Some lawyers in the House have this committee where we are kind of overseeing the litigation that's been filed against the Trump administration. And we have filed 17 amicus briefs from the House of Representatives as a whole. So I've signed on to 17 amicus briefs filed within the Supreme Court. In fact, just today, we submitted another amicus brief to the Supreme Court in support of Congress's Article 1 exclusive legislative power to impose tariffs and regulate commerce. This administration is completely obliterating the Constitution. It is very clear. It is very explicit. It is not ambiguous at all that only Congress has the ability to engage in these activities. And so we are suing the administration and have filed an amicus brief in that as well. In 38 weeks since this administration has been in office, over 450 lawsuits, 457, I don't want to shortchange those 7 lawsuits across this country directly challenging Trump's lawless and unconstitutional acts. And we are winning a lot of these cases. A federal judge halted the Trump administration's plan to fire thousands of federal workers. And a federal appeals court upheld a lower court ruling blocking the National Guard from going to Chicago. I know that seems to be a moving piece. A competing appellate court allowed that to go into Oregon, so there's some discrepancy there. So obviously that's going to get to the Supreme Court pretty quickly. A Trump-appointed district judge extended a temporary restraining order preventing the Trump administration from firing more federal employees. And we have been also litigating about FEMA and immigration grants and many others, and that was just this week. So when people ask me, what are Democrats doing? I tell them we're doing everything we can. We're legislating, we're raising hell, we're litigating, we're, trying to educate the public as to what's happening. One of the biggest frustrations that we have is the fact that people just are not aware and they're not tuned in, and we're trying to just make sure and help connect the dots of what's happening in this country, because at the end of the day, this is the dot line that needs to be connected. And as you're talking to your family, your coworkers, your friends, your community, people in the world, this is the thing. At its simplest form, the biggest question that people have is why? What are we doing? Why do they want to cut our health care? Why are they trying to do these things? Trump cut a deal with big tech and the billionaires that run big tech to get money for his campaign. And they spent an incredible amount of money. And the deal was, I'm going to give you big tax cuts. That was the deal. You get me reelected, I'm going to pass you a massive tax cut. So the payout for that is healthcare, your healthcare. It's Medicaid. It's funding for NIH and research and museums and all the other things, public broadcasting, USAID, all the things that make our country, that's the payoff for these big tax breaks. And so people have to just make sure they feel that in their bones. That is the why. That is why. It's because they cut a deal for power on the backs of the American people, on the backs of our institutions, and the things that we all hold dear. And so we have to, vote, get people involved, and do all the things that we need to do as concerned people. I want to shift topics to, people have asked, I wanted to advise you of some of the legislation we have filed. Really excited about a lot of this. I think we have some good pathways for many of these things. So we filed a bipartisan, I have a Republican co-sponsor, Patient Access to Autoimmune Treatments Act. This is the prior authorization bill I referenced to you. It's very similar to the prior auth bill that I was able to pass in the Texas legislature. But what it does is if you have a chronic autoimmune disease or a blood disorder, you have to have regular treatments and medications like every 30 days. And this mandates that you only have to go through this process once a year not every 30 days. And it's going to really cut back on physician time to have to go through these processes, patient frustrations, and hopefully should streamline your ability to get health care and your medicines and those sorts of things. I'm very concerned about AI and what's happening in our politics and truth. I filed the Protect Elections from Deceptive AI Act, which is a bipartisan bill to safeguard American democracy from the growing threat of artificial intelligence and make sure that we have truth, that you can't just make stuff up in a political ad, imply that somebody said something that they didn't, or all of those things. The No Foreign Fundraising at U.S. Embassies Act. This is to prohibit the use of our U.S. embassies and consulates and other diplomatic posts for raising funds for foreign political parties and candidates. Obviously, the Trump administration uses these things and weaponizes our foreign political clout in a way that should not be done. The Bipartisan Pipeline Security Act, which gives the TSA greater authority to ensure that the nearly 3 million miles of pipelines are protected from cyber attacks. We know what's happened. We've seen firsthand in our state when our energy shuts down. That means people can die and we have catastrophic implications. And cybersecurity is becoming a big issue in our national security profile. And so this is to keep our energy system safe from cyber attacks. The Reproductive Rights or Human Rights Act of 25, which restores transparency and accountability by requiring the United States State Department to include reproductive rights once again back in the annual Human Rights Report. They took it out, the Trump administration. This has been a long standing report of data that we keep to keep up with women and our human rights opportunities throughout the world, and this would require them to put that back. Another one is kind of just a simple consumer thing that we filed. This is one of my staffers was so annoyed at this, and so we filed this. This is called the Easy Returns Act, which requires online retailers to provide you a return shipping label. It's so hard to send things back, and, like my sons, they can't print anything. These young people can't print a return label, it seems like. And so this will make it easier for people to return an item since we're doing so much in online commerce and just make it easier to do business that way. And this is what I'm really excited about. It's called the Access to Home Ownership Act. We have a critical housing shortage, and there are so many reasons why people can't get into housing. We have over 62% of Texas 32 are renters, and folks would like to have the opportunity to be a home owner. But, if you rent, you can have the best rental payment history. You could pay your rent on time every month, always. And that never helps your credit. It never helps you build a credit rating in order to qualify for a mortgage. So this is a simple bill that says, no, if you are a renter and you pay your rent on time, you should be able to use that as leverage to help qualify for home ownership and your ability to get a home. And so we're really excited about that. And that has a lot of support from realtor groups and many others. And so hopefully we'll be able to get that one across the finish line. But it does require the government to open up. So, a lot of these legislation ideas, it just doesn't come to me at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. This is about, we hear from we hear from constituents, we hear from folks that say, hey, I have a problem and I have this idea. And we take that idea and flesh it out into a way that can make it legislatively possible. So we definitely want to hear from you for sure. And they're asking me to remind you that if you have a question, please hit *3. And if you want to subscribe to our fabulous, most awesome, most incredible newsletter, please press *6. Before we move to questions, I want to address some other issues. I want all of our federal workers out there for you to know that my office remains open and available to help you navigate this time. So if you have any questions about how this shutdown will impact you or the services that you use, please do not hesitate to contact our office at 972-972-7949. That's 972-972-7949. And of course, that's on our website. I also want to point out that our website, juliejohnson.house.gov, there's a page under our services for government shutdown resources. So if you are having questions and you want to know what's happening, please reach out to our website. We've tried really hard to put as many questions as we can possibly think of and the answers to so that you have it right there available to you at your fingertips to be able to have that. And if that answer is not there, please contact us. Also, we have mobile office hours where we go out into the district, go out into the neighborhoods to try to make it that much easier for you to find us. We're going to have our next mobile office hour on Thursday, November the 13th from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the North Garland Branch Library. That's on Garland Road. And my team looks forward to seeing you there. So again, press *3 to subscribe to our newsletter. For a question, and *6 to subscribe to our newsletter. And I think we've received a ton of questions. And so Thomas, what's our first question going to be?
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Before we move to questions, we would like you to participate in a poll. And the question is, do you support Democrats continuing to hold the line to protect your access to affordable health care? For participants on the line, you can press 1 for yes and 2 for no. Again, do you support Democrats continuing to hold the line to protect your access to affordable health care? Press 1 for yes and press 2 for no. We'll now begin to take your questions. And if you would like a question asked, please press *3. And if you would like to subscribe to Congresswoman Johnson's newsletter, please press *6. Congresswoman, we received a lot of questions regarding benefits like Social Security, veterans benefits, and other services that the government provides, including SNAP and WIC and other things like that. And so I would love for you to just address kind of an overview of what benefits are available, what benefits could be delayed with the government shutdown.
Yeah, that's very good. Very good question. So let's just answer some of these. Recipients will absolutely continue to receive your Social Security and supplemental security checks. Those will not be affected. The Social Security Administration will continue to issue original and replacement Social Security cards and process applications for benefits in the field. All the field offices will be open. And then as for civil service retirement payments, because that's a little bit different issue, those will continue as planned regardless of whether the government is shut down. While we're talking about benefits, let me just go ahead and address a few other things. So Medicare, for Medicare's open enrollment, the shutdown is not supposed to impact that. It should still keep on going, and payments eligible for states under the CHIP program should also continue. And Pell Grants and federal student loans should also continue. Housing benefits, Section 8, should continue as well, although the block grants that are used to create a surplus of housing supply will be paused. Taxes for the IRS, you're still responsible to pay your taxes. You don't get to say, because the government shut down, I don't get to pay my taxes. Don't do that. Pay your taxes when you're supposed to. But you may have some delays reaching IRS employees on the phone and that sort of stuff. I'm assured that veterans health care is not going to be affected. We inquired about that. We had several people reach out to us about that ahead of time. Now, this is all kind of subject to clearly federal employees showing up for work. Part of what happened in the previous shutdowns is what broke the logjam is air traffic controllers quit coming to work. Our national air traffic system just pretty much went on halt. And that was enough of a pressure point to get a deal done. So, who knows how long the federal workforce are going to continue to go without a paycheck. Could start to affect some of these issues. With respect to SNAP and WIC benefits, right now, WIC remains open as long as the funding is available, but Texas SNAP will be cut off as of November 1st. They are not going to refund any monies on SNAP cards and that sort of stuff. And, in Texas 32, we have 28,613 households that utilize SNAP, and in Texas as a whole, we have over almost 800,000 people that do WIC. That is like pregnant mothers and kids under 5 getting healthy food. This is a moral issue about people going hungry. Without quick action from Republicans, this 1 in 8 people will be without food assistance because of this. And so this is a top priority and top concern for Democrats. We have introduced legislation. We have sent letters. We have done all the things we can do legislatively to get the government to cover this during this shutdown. In addition to paying our troops and other things, I've co-sponsored the Feed Our Families bill that would fund SNAP and continue these important programs. I know that our ranking member on Ag, which oversees these programs, is sort of all over it and is doing everything they can. But just know, you're going to have neighbors in need. Our food banks and our food pantries are going to be stretched like they've never been stretched before. They're going to need volunteers and they're going to need donations. So if you're asking what you can do, first, check on your neighbors. Go door to door and just knock on the door. Go back to old school of what it's like to reach out to people and say, how are you doing? Are you okay? Can I help you? We need to get back to compassion with our neighbors and people we know. And then once you do that, go volunteer. Go buy that extra sack of groceries and deliver it to a food pantry near you. And because this is going to be a time when we all have to step up and support our neighbors and support our community, because people are going to be really struggling and they're going to be really scared. And there's going to be a lot of parents out there really scared about how they're going to feed their babies. And we can't let that happen. So we all have to stand up and do our part. So.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. And as a reminder, if you want a question asked, please press *3. And if you'd like to subscribe to Congresswoman Johnson's newsletter, please press *6. The next question comes from Rick from Dallas. He asks, what is being done to swear in Adelita Grijalva and release the Epstein files?
Epstein Gate. Well, yeah, this is a big issue. Adelita Grijalva was duly elected to represent Arizona's 7th Congressional District at the end of September. It's been almost a month. In a special election, she replaces her father, who died while in office. At the time, so there's a thing called a discharge petition, and that's a way that members of the House can be to break a logjam. If there's a legislative initiative that's stuck in committee because the chairman won't let it out or the speaker won't put it on the House floor calendar, it's a way for the majority of the House to say, we demand to do something on this issue. And that's called a discharge petition. It still requires the majority of the House to sign it to make that happen. And so at the time she was elected, there were 217 signatures on a discharge petition that would force a House vote to release the Epstein files. I signed on to this disposition. I'm for release the files. But what that means is Adelita would be the 218th signature. And that is the magic number that we need in order to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files. Speaker Johnson has refused to swear her in, saying that we're in pro forma and he cannot do that. That is an absolute lie. He swore in 2 Republicans under a pro forma. He could swear her in at any time he so chooses. But he doesn't want to do this because he does not want the House to vote on the Epstein files, and he doesn't want the Epstein files to become part of the narrative of what the country is talking about. Right now, Arizona's Attorney General has filed a lawsuit to force the swearing in of Representative-elect Grijalva, and we are going to, go see where that goes. The Epstein files should have been made public during the Biden administration, and that's a criticism I have. They should have released that, and they should now be released by the Trump administration. The clear cover-up of these files is outrageous, and it has only made the American people ask even more questions of our political leaders. I have joined my colleagues and millions of Americans in demanding that they have justice. We cannot allow women and girls across this nation to be sexually abused, sexually trafficked, and their voices need to be heard, and they deserve justice. So this is what we need. We need transparency. The American people deserve answers. I'm fully supportive of that, and we need to get Adelita sworn in. On another note, in November 4th, in Houston, we're going to have the special election for the seat to fill from Sylvester Turner, who died. And that will be the 219th vote signature on the discharge petition. So we're about to get 2 seats back. Once that election happens, the Democrats will gain another 2 votes, which will really help on these very, very close votes in the House right now.
Thank you. As a reminder, if you want to ask a question, please press *3. And if you would like to subscribe to Congresswoman Johnson's newsletter, please press *6. The next question comes from Gerald from Dallas. He asks, what will happen if the Supreme Court overturns the Civil Rights Act? How will minority voters be affected? And how will this redistricting effort affect my vote in the midterm elections?
I'm very concerned about the Voting Rights Act in the Supreme Court. They are going to have this Louisiana case. It didn't go well. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, what it does is it prohibits, voting practices and gerrymandering that discriminate voters on the basis of race or color or membership of a minority group. It bans any electoral practice that results in a denial or abridgment, that's the official term, of the right to vote for a protected class. If the court decides to declare Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act invalid, we're looking at anywhere from 12 to 20, minority seats across the South and across this country from being completely eliminated. It will significantly impact the balance of power in Congress, the representation and impact of minority voters. And that is why states under Democratic control must redistrict these states to fight against what Republicans are doing. On the redistricting as a whole, Texas repassed their maps. We had a trial on these maps. Lawsuits were filed. The trial was held in El Paso, October 1st through the 10th. Our lawyers think it went really well. The case against these maps is very strong. It's a strong constitutional argument on the 14th Amendment of racial discrimination in this country and in Texas, rather. And so we're awaiting the result of the trial court. It is a 3-judge federal panel. That result will automatically get appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it'll be interesting to see what they do because but just the calendar, the appeal of that ruling will be right before the filing period here in Texas. Right now, the filing period closes December 8th. That's our filing deadline. And depending on when the trial court rules before our filing period, they could extend that deadline. The Supreme Court may say, it's too close to that deadline, we'll take it up. But if we prevail on that, then we would all run for re-election in our existing maps. That's the general thing. And as you know, California has Prop 50, which will redistrict the entire state and result in Democratic opportunities in 5 seats to kind of combat what is happening in Texas and across the country. Virginia just announced today that they're going to redistrict as well and do theirs in 3 states. What we've seen happen is that a lot of the Democratic states had passed independent redistricting commissions, while many of the Republican states just engaged in brazen political gerrymandering. And so what you're seeing now is an effort to pause some of this independent map drawing and say, if we're all going to be in the partisan mud, then we're all going to be in the partisan mud. And just to level the playing field, I personally strongly favor a national independent redistricting. I think the map should be fair across the board, and we should stand up. We should be held to a general electorate for what we're doing as members of Congress and whatever elected position you're in. And the voters across the board should pick us. We shouldn't be picking our voters. But until then, we're in the mud wrestling of political gerrymandering right now. Now, this is really, really important. If you are concerned about this, which I hope you all are, because the national balance of power is really, really important, get involved and volunteer. call and be part of a phone bank for Prop 50. Get in there. Voting is happening right now in California. Everyone in the state gets a mail-in ballot. You can be part of a solution. There's something you can do to put your anxious energy to use, and that is joining phone banks to help make sure that the Prop 50 ballot initiative passes. It's really, really important. And on another note, we have a special election happening right here in North Texas with Senate District 9 and Taylor Ramett, who's running to replace Kelly Hancock. These special elections are low turnout races. There's a ton of Democrats in Tarrant County. I encourage you all to go volunteer and block walk for him, phone bank for him. It would be really amazing if we could pick up a Senate seat in a state Senate seat in Tarrant County. And that is another space of how you can get dramatically involved in responding to kind of what's happening right now.
Thank you very much. As a reminder, if you want to ask a question or have a question asked, please press *3. And if you would like to subscribe to the Congresswoman's newsletter, please press *6. The next question comes from Charlie from Addison, and he asks, will the National Guard be policing us here in Texas, and what documents should I carry with me?
Well, I don't think the National Guard will be deployed to Texas, although Abbott could employ the National Guard to police Texas citizens and residents. But right now, Abbott has sent their troops to Chicago and trying to play politics with Donald Trump. Other states told Donald Trump no, but Greg Abbott said, yes, sir, how many, where, immediately. Because, our governor will do anything to lick the boot of this president. But it's absolutely outrageous. In my opinion, it's completely unconstitutional. The National Guard is not designed as an organization to militarize and police American citizens. That is not their function. That is not their role. That is not how they are trained to function and operate. That is the role for police and sheriffs who are trained in policing, not the National Guard. Their job is to, keep us safe from adversaries abroad and assist in natural disasters. And so these lawsuits so far have prevailed in restricting National Guard deployment, but we'll obviously have to follow what's happening in the courts.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. The next question comes from Jessica from Dallas. Asks, what is being done to stop ICE from their brutal tactics?
ICE is just unhinged and is outrageous. I've been speaking out against this since Kristi Noem testified in front of my committee. I was the first elected official to actually raise hell about the fact that they were using these masked men, unidentified, just snatching people off the streets. And then it kind of brought attention to this to everyone. But I think what we're doing is we're trying to hold them accountable. I visited, my staff and we went out to the Bluebonnet Detention Center, which is about a 3-hour drive from Dallas. It's the large detention center here in the North Texas area. Took a tour. They were very anxious about our visit. They had all these people come from D.C. They had that thing spick and span, polished to the nines because we were there. The thing that really stood out for me, though, is, this is supposed to be for violent criminals, right? People who've committed murder and heinous acts of violence against our society. These are the people they're supposedly rounding up, violent criminals. But no, over 70% of the people in this detention center had never had a single criminal conviction. None. No criminal history at all. But they just got rounded up because of the color of their skin. I was able to visit with some of the detainees there. One guy was a construction worker, had worked in construction here in Dallas for 26 years as a framer. Has a family, a wife, has 4 children born in this country. and is going to be deported to El Salvador. He's not a threat to our country. He's not a threat to our economy. He's a contributor to our economy. And then what's going to happen to his children? Who's going to support them? How are they going to function because they deported their dad? So it's, it's really upsetting to me what's happening. And to go back, I think one of the questions was ID. If you find yourself concerned, make sure you have proof of citizenship with you. If you have a passport, carry it. Make sure that you can prove that you're a United States citizen. If you know people who have been wrongfully detained, please have their family reach out to our office. We are here to help people. We'll do everything we can to get answers for the families. We do have to have people who have the appropriate authority to act on their behalf and sign all the documents that they require us to sign. But please make sure that you have folks reach out to us because we're very concerned about what is happening with ICE and all of that.
Thank you. And as a reminder, if you would like a question asked, please press *3. And if you'd like to subscribe to Congresswoman Johnson's newsletter, please press *6. The next question comes from Abraham, who lives in Dallas, and they ask, how can Congress force Israel to allow water, food, and medicine into Gaza?
Well, I think that humanitarian aid, all of this is a very, very critical issue. We're very concerned about the health and welfare of the Palestinian people. Right now, it seems like the ceasefire deal is back on, obviously using every diplomatic measure possible, make sure that it's safe travel, have a regulating force. I believe that is on the table with, I think, in current countries like Egypt and Qatar, and some of those folks locally are going to put in a stabilizing force to make sure and ensure that aid can get in. I'm glad that the hostages have finally been released, but there's so much needed to happen going forward. There's so many unanswered questions in terms of how is Gaza going to rebuild? Who's going to pay for that? How is Gaza going to, the Palestinian people, how are they going to govern themselves? Is the Palestinian authority, are they going to take over? Are they going to be empowered to take over? Are they going to be recognized diplomatically? The United States needs to use every tool possible to make sure that we can rebuild and achieve a lasting peace in this region. I fully support a two-state solution so that Israel has a right to exist and in safety, and Palestine has a right to exist in safety. And so hopefully it's a long road. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs and diplomatic quagmires probably that we haven't even anticipated, but we just have to be a robust advocate for peace in that region.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Before we move to additional questions, I'd like to announce the results of the poll question that we asked. And as a reminder, that question was, do you support Democrats continuing to hold the line to protect your access to affordable health care? 93% of respondents on this call believe that Democrats should hold the line to defend access to affordable health care. And this kind of ties us into our next question, which is from Chelsea from Dallas. And Chelsea asks, as a small business owner who pays health insurance for my employees by a third party, what is going to happen to our costs, and will there be any assistance?
Yeah, yes, Chelsea, you have nailed this on the head. This is going to really hurt small businesses. The people who are going to be most directly impacted by the loss of these ACA credits are small businesses, people who work for small businesses, people who are self-employed, and people who get their insurance through the marketplace. But this is why we're fighting for this, because I think otherwise you're going to have a significant increase in your premiums, and it's going to make it unsustainable for so many small businesses, and that's why we're doing this. I'm so happy to see the results of this poll, that it's so strong, because that has been my sense. That's what we've heard from you, and that is my sense of this is an issue that we just have to hold the line on. Because, I don't know I had a law firm for over 30 years. I was a small business owner, and providing health insurance to my employees was one of the single greatest expenses that I had. It's unsustainable for so many small business owners. And this is why, Chelsea, that we're holding the line on this issue, because you won't be able to afford it most likely. It's really concerning.
Thank you very much. And as a reminder, if you would like to subscribe to Congresswoman Johnson's newsletter, please make sure you press *6. The next question comes from Teresa, and she asks, why is there a delay of the replacement of open seats in Texas where representatives had passed away? And I believe, Congresswoman, she's referencing the seat in Houston that was formerly Sylvester Turner's.
Because Greg Abbott did not set a election hearing in any reasonable time. Sylvester Turner was a friend of mine, and I was so happy to be able to serve with him. But they have had no representation in the 18th Congressional District for months and months and months and months. And that is because under the law, the governor sets the date for the special election. And Greg Abbott put the date out as far as possible and put it on the November 4th ballot versus having a separate date earlier in the calendar for just this election. So that is why it's on November 4th. In some of the other states, like Virginia, when Jerry Connolly died, the governor set that special election very quickly. But here, unfortunately, Greg Abbott set it out for so late, and that's why it took so long.
Thank you very much. We'll move to another question. This is from Katie, and Katie asks, what can you tell us about the expansion of prior authorization for Medicare in the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Well, there is a comprehensive prior auth bill out there. Unfortunately, it's not moving, and it addresses Medicare. I decided to take a more surgical approach to prior auth because that was the strategy that was successful for me in the Texas legislature. And mine addresses Medicare. And so if you are a Medicare recipient, then my prior auth bill that I filed will relate to that. But it's more limited to those with chronic disease. Because the argument that insurance companies use for prior authorization is that, it's for waste. We don't know if this is a necessary treatment. But if you have a chronic disease, you're not getting over it. It's not getting any better. You're going to have it now. You're going to have it next month. You're going to have it the month after that. You're going to have it the year after that. You're just going to have it. So to force you to go through these prior authorization things every 30 days is just abusive to the patient. It takes tons of time for the physician to process all the paperwork, and it just makes everything delay and more expensive. So my bill addresses that in Medicare. Unfortunately, the comprehensive, gigantic prior auth bill is just stuck. And sometimes when you try to solve all the problems at once, you can solve none of them, which is why I've tried to go more surgical and specific to try to address this and move the needle on prior auth, because it hasn't moved, and it needs to, because it's a critical issue that bogs down our healthcare system.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. And I believe we have time for one final question before we move to a closing statement. So as a reminder for anybody on the call, if you would like to be added to Congresswoman Johnson's newsletter, please press *6, and a team member will be there to assist you. Moving to our last question, we have a question on Social Security and Medicare, specifically when the checks will come. And I know, Congresswoman, you addressed this at the beginning, but there may be additional services that may be continued or not continued that could be helpful for some constituents. So again, the question is from Susan from Dallas, asking when or will Social Security and Medicare checks, will they still come in this government shutdown?
Yes, they're supposed to, and you should still receive them per your usual method. And so you should not have an impact on Social Security and Medicare checks. They are mandated to, those are programs that are mandated to continue whether the government is open or not. And so you should not have a problem. If you have a problem, call my office. We can help you. My staff is incredible of their constituent services. I'm just so proud of their commitment to the people of the 32nd Congressional District and their commitment to just getting people help. We've gotten people tax refunds. We've gotten visas done. We've gotten people released from detention. We've had all kinds of stuff, results that folks have needed help with that my staff has been able to help with. So if you find that Susan, if you don't get your Social Security check on time, please make sure that we hear from you. But everything that I have been briefed on, everything that I've been told is that this should proceed without any problem. So you should be okay. So if that was our last question, I guess, yeah, we are running out of time, I see. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found this information helpful. I hope that we answered a lot of your questions. I hope you understand if there's one thing you've gleaned from this call is that I'm just as pissed off as you are, and I'm fighting as hard as I can, and my staff is just doing everything they can to protest what is happening in this country and to take care of you and your needs in our constituency. You know, I want to encourage you to find your passion, use it, be active, talk to your neighbors, reach out, get involved. Let us hear from you. Sign up for our newsletter, *6, and, you know, just keep the faith. We're in some trying times in our country right now. We're seeing things that we never thought we would see in the United States of America, and things that I never thought I would ever see. I never thought I would see a wrecking ball to the White House. I never thought I would see our First Amendment so trampled on. But you know what was interesting about the Jimmy Kimmel thing that provided me great hope is that the people responded. When you canceled 1 million Hulu subscriptions, that got the attention. We have to use our economic power. We have to use our cumulative voice to effectuate the things. We have to stand united. You know, we may not all agree on 100% of the things, but we agree on enough of the things to make sure that we stand arm in arm with one voice and fight back against this authoritarian administration. But what is also most disappointing is the complicitness that Republicans have had in this, and the complicitness that we've seen in corporate America, bending the knee, the complicitness that we've seen in media outlets, the complicitness that we've seen from some of our universities sucking up to this administration as opposed to standing up for their students. We need to reward those that stand firm, and we need to encourage people to be focused and on the thing. So, at any rate, I want to thank you for joining us. Reach out to us. It's my most highest honor to represent you in Congress, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Congresswoman. On behalf of our office, I'd like to thank everyone for joining this town hall tonight. Before you go, please stay on the line if you'd like to subscribe to our newsletter but haven't talked to a team member yet. You'll be able to leave a message with your email momentarily. And if you have a question that you did not get answered, please stay on the line to leave a message with your question and your contact information, including your name, email, and address, and Congresswoman Johnson's office will be sure to get back to you. In addition, if you would like to view a recording of this town hall, you can visit our official YouTube channel at Rep. Julie Johnson, or you can visit our official Facebook page, Congresswoman Julie Johnson, where you can find a recording of tonight's town hall. Thank you again for joining this, and this ends tonight's telephone town hall.